I built a $10 million online education business by writing words on a screen. As simple as that. I started Story Learning back in 2013 and it was a blog. I would write one blog post a week and I just kept that up for long enough to start to develop traffic and start to build a business. And learning to write has been by far one of the most valuable and profitable skills that I've ever learned. And I've never really had any training, but I've spent an awfully long time writing online. And so I'd like to share the 3-stage writing process that I've developed over the years and that I still use to this day to write my newsletter. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on this video. That way you get more videos just like this. So my writing process is broken down into 3 different stages: ideation, writing, and editing. Ideation is where you get the idea for what you're going to write about in the first place. Writing is the actual writing of it, I guess the planning the table of contents and writing of it, I guess you'd say. And then the editing bit is actually the most important bit of all. This is where the magic happens, this is where you develop your voice, and this is where the piece really goes from scrappy nothingness to something that's actually finished, presentable and polished. So I tend to do all of my ideation when I'm walking around here in Hobbitshire. I get most of my good ideas when I'm either in the shower or out walking. There's just, for some reason, this kind of movement, stimulation is where good ideas come from. Sometimes in conversation with people, you know, talking about business or life or whatever, ideas will come to me. And so what I do is whenever these ideas come to me, I make sure that I always write, I stop whatever I'm doing, I get out my phone, open the Notion app, which is where I keep my ideas, and I just write these ideas down. I tend to, for my newsletter, the ollyrichards.co newsletter, I write about things in 4 different categories: mindset, lifestyle, strategy, tactical, and finance. So whenever I have an idea, I just literally get out my phone, I make a point of always writing it down, because I know that once the idea's gone, it's probably gone forever or for like a few months or something. So I always write it down immediately. And this is the really simple ideation stage. You never want to be in a position where you're sitting down to write and you don't know what you're going to write about. Okay, you want to always have I've got a collection of hundreds of things at this point that I want to write about. And they're all collected in one very, very simple place. So this is ideation. It's no more complicated than that, but it's obviously extremely important to do well. Next up is the writing stage. Now this is broken down into 2 phases for me. So first of all, what I do is I mind map the topic. So here I'm writing about, this is my mind map on, I wrote a newsletter, I think it was number 4 or 5, on my plan for growing the newsletter. So this is how it all begins. I literally just write down all of the topic. Well, you know what a mind map is. It's all the topics that I think could go into this and all the points I want to make. I just get it all down. It's one big brain dump on paper. I'm not looking to hold back anything at this stage. It's everything that could possibly go into it. And then what I do is, once it's all out there on paper, I'll go through and kind of ruthlessly cut out anything that I don't think is strictly relevant to the point that I'm trying to make. And the idea here is to be really quite tight with the flow. So whatever it is that you're writing about, you don't want to waste time with anything extraneous. You want to have a really clear through line in the whole piece so that it leads the reader through the argument or the information that you want to give from the beginning to the end. So I think here, actually, I didn't cut anything out in the end here, but often with these mind maps, you'd see huge, great, scribbles where I'm like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And then once I've got that all out and I know what I'm going to write about, I then put it in order. You can see here, I kind of literally just write down the order, going to do that, then that, then that. This was a pretty straightforward one, so I kind of knew what it was going to be before I started. And so now what I've got is the table of contents and the order that everything is going to be in. That might take me 10-15 minutes, and as soon as that's done, I start writing. And I use an app on my Mac. It's called IA Writer, not AI Writer. Don't use those. IA Writer. I quite like it because it's got this focus mode, so it kind of highlights whatever sentence it is that you're writing. And then, so this is literally a case of just sitting down and writing. This is by far the longest part. It's actually not the creative part here. This is more of the kind of dull grunt work, to be honest, because you've already got your ideas. What you're doing is just kind of translating the ideas from your mind map onto paper. I mean, I've done a lot of writing, so I'm fairly quick at this, but this could easily take 2-3 hours to write everything down. What's really important is I'm not editing as I go here. Okay, I'm trying to just get the ideas out. I'm sitting down and I'm writing. The aim is just to kind of crank through the whole thing and get it done. That's my kind of mindset. And the reason that I'm not too fussed about what happens here is because when you get to the 3rd stage, this is where you can really refine it and make it presentable. Okay, if I would never show anybody like a first draft of my writing. I'd be horrified. But you see, what I do later in the editing phase is I actually print it out on paper, and I go through pen and paper and I just tear it apart. I move sections around, I edit, I put the headlines in, all of that stuff. And this is because, and I always do it the next day or a few days later, because when you come back to your writing fresh, you always see a whole bunch of things that you want to change, because you're reading it fresh. You're kind of reading it from the perspective of someone who's reading your own writing. Right? It's just a much better process. So I mark up the whole thing. My things are normally about 2,000 words. It takes a while to read and mark up, and then I literally go back and retype it. I could maybe have someone do that, but I think it would be pretty difficult to do well, so I just sit down and do it myself. It takes about 15-20 minutes or so, and then it's done. At that point then, I might record a video if I'm doing a video to go with the newsletter, but otherwise I'm done at that point. And all of that stuff I regard as the kind of creative artistry, really. It's the ideation, it's the writing, and it's the editing. That's really where my job ends. Because what happens next is I have an assistant who then takes my raw writing and then will work that up into blog posts and into newsletters. Because this is what makes it presentable, but it doesn't have to be my kind of unique skill or my own individual time doing that, because that's not where my unique output is, right? My output needs to be on the creative writing side of things, not in the WordPress side of things, right? So I have an assistant who does that, and this really makes it so that I can focus on my writing, which I do every morning from 9 till 12. Okay, 3 hours of writing, ideation, writing, editing every day. That's my system. And this allows me to focus on that stuff and make sure I do videos like this. So that's the kind of only outsourcing part that I do. So yeah, there you go. That's how I like to write. I'd really love to hear if you do anything different in your writing process, or if you've taken anything from this. If you'd like to actually read the product of what all this writing system is like, then head over to ollyrichards.co. You can sign up to a newsletter where you can get 117 pages of said writing. And in those 117 pages is a case study of how I built a $10 million online education business. So head over there, subscribe to the newsletter, and subscribe to this channel as well.